curious.
Guess who's in trouble?
Yeah.
I needed
You can repeat everything you said.
yeah. Take it from the top.
I was just curious, I guess, as far as types of output that you guys are kind of receiving, right? So Russ, we just talked about parsing data and receiving data, right, through the agents, interpreting the contract guides, passing back data, right? I think you guys have given some examples of maybe structured content or text, right? Kind of written in a appealing way, right? The blog post, the letter, the email. Anyone doing anything with like, I don't even know where to get it, but like images, like, I mean, there's so many other places you can go other than just getting structured data. I guess code too, or do you guys using the right code?
Well, one more time.
Okay.
I mean, you can definitely use it. We've said it a bunch already. You always got to check what it does.
Yeah.
And it's always getting smarter about it. And it's the other really cool thing about this stuff, right? Is what you did last month, if you try to redo it again this month, it's probably better. It's better. It's better. It's definitely getting it.
Yeah.
But and the other challenge is, you're right, the possibilities of limits. This is what really, I think, makes it so challenging. You can do everything these guys said, but 1,000 other things too, in a number of different ways. Yeah, and that's what makes it so excitement about it, but also makes it so confusing at the same time. Yeah,
So, like, to answer your question about I guess something being like unstructured or whatever, one of the things that you can do, and that I have done, is you can, inside of Azure, you can, so if you know like SharePoint, you can basically dump all your files in there. You can dump all your files in there. You can use Azure Cognitive Search, which is like a Microsoft thing. You can have that point at your files, and then you can have OpenAI point at that, and then you can, like, I'll give you a real world example of something I used it for. So like we used to use a different system to have all of our SOPs for our business, like how you handle different situations. And once I realized where this was going, I was like, we got to put everything in SharePoint, and we're going to put it in documents in SharePoint. And now that we have it in there, then, and we trained it, we can just say, hey, how do you load the firmware on Netgear switch or something? And then we'll say, oh yeah, this is how you do it. And here's a document, actually, that's the reference. That's the source document. You can click on the source document, and I mean, it makes it really, really easy, because for me, one of my challenges with my business is that I have a lot of experience with tech, and I hire a lot of people who don't really have that experience, and they don't really know a lot of this stuff. So they have to continually ask me questions. And it's like, I wrote an article about that last year, but like nobody can find it. So now you can dump all that stuff into documents, and they can just ask that model, and it might not give them the perfect answer, but it will say, this is the document where I found the answer. And then it will link them directly to that document. So it's a huge time saver if you can have it set up. And the thing is, what I just described is like in preview. It's like not even something that you have to like apply with Microsoft to like have like allow them to give you access to this stuff. It's all like in preview. And like what Dan was saying, like this is gonna, every month this stuff is changing and it's getting better. And like we're gonna look a year from today, and it's gonna be a lot more, like widespread. It's still kind of like the early days here with this stuff.
Can you guys speak to your perspective on or your use of auditing? So if you just gave a great example of, here's my answer, but here's the source document. I can imagine a number of situations, whether you're a brief or something, but where you want to be able to go back and see the source material is this valid, get that deeper insight. How are you guys facing that?
Yeah, I mean, we do it as obviously the Squark. It's a little bit different in a scenario where, as I mentioned earlier, our end users are typically going to be in business owners, marketing owners. They're not going to have any idea what really happened behind the scenes. Like, I can show them all these great metrics. It's an AUC, what's an RSME. I have no idea. So we spend a lot of time trying to visualize what happened so that they can actually understand the process we went through to validate, you know, hey, we think this is the best model for you to answer this question you just asked. Why? So here's the steps we took to test that theory, and the hundreds and thousands of times we do that against any one of these models, and then visualize it out in a way they can understand it. So I'm not going to give you a bunch of metrics. But that's a very different scenario than what you guys are talking about, like using it to find textual information and then comparing it together. So, you know, since we're typically answering kind of a classification question where we're trying to put it into a bucket, and we're trying to say, hey, this is the amount of this is how much somebody's likely to spend on a product that they're going to buy. A little bit different scenario than if you're trying to compare. Hey, what I've got this structured text that I've created for you, and how did I create the structured text? So I think there's a lot of different ways validation has to happen, and trust has to be built.
Speak to the variance and the value proposition. That you're doing with, you know, structured data using AI is fantastic. And a very different use case than with us. But, you know, for us, really happening is when you go through an operation, for instance, you load up a contract and extracts data, that gets written out to our contract is loaded up, ran through our AI process, audit log history. You know, when you do a comparison, like this was some of the stuff we're working on now, when you go and do that cross comparison, it'll actually memorialize when that happens, and that'll also will then influence workflow process, stuff like that. You know, so then the end user experience is I load that contract up, it does the comparison. Next thing I know, I'm going to get a task assignment, you know, in our process. They'll then open up Word, there'll be basically a narrative that says, hey, this clause was bad because of X, Y, and Z, and give an interpretation. So that would be the user experience. And again, that stuff is written out to the
Yes, there might be a little bit of confusion of the difference between structured and unstructured data. You guys can provide some examples of what fits into each bucket.
Yeah, I mean, if you think of structured data, it's basically just rows and columns. Think of like you're in Excel, right? And you just got X, Y, and Z columns out there. You've got these rows out there. You know, so the data is actually put into a format that makes sense. You don't have data at different granularity. You don't have free-form text out there that, you know, doesn't relate to the other information you've brought together. So when we think structured, it's exactly that. You've defined how this data relates to each other, and it's all organized into rows and columns. Unstructured, very different stuff.
Yeah, unstructured is like you have a Word document, you have an Excel
PDF
document, and
file.
some text, some PDFs, and like
Image.
who even knows like what that stuff is?
But a lot of that stuff though, like for instance, if you receive an image, like if someone sends you a file, like for instance, a PDF file, I don't know if you guys know this, but with PDF, it either can be an image only, or it can be image and text, and you're gonna treat it different. If it's an image only, then oftentimes when you're dealing with AI, one of the first steps you have to go through is OCR. Obviously, read all that information to turn it into unstructured content, which can then be used for then applying AI. So that it passes, and you'll hear that different portions of AI will be used. There's a concept called a pipeline, right, programmatically, and you'll hear some of this used in terms of that when you're trying to fit some function through the process, there's a pipeline that's built. It's not a programmatic term, but basically, hey, I'm in the pipeline, I'm going to stop here and use this particular function to do the OCR piece. I'm going to read the text. This piece I'm going to use AI for extraction. This piece I'm going to use it for summarization. And what you're finding is that it's not a one size fits all. Like you might have heard of GPT-4, GPT 3.5, 3.5 Turbo. Those different large language models, those different engines, what happens is some of them are a little bit better at one thing than another. So at times, based upon the cost as well, you'll use different portions of those models. And oftentimes it's put in this pipeline, this, then this, then this, to get the ultimate result. You know, the other thing too I'd share is I think the world is being turned upside down, and people are not realizing this in terms of Microsoft and other companies are now charging very different. They're charging based upon consumption basis, right? In terms of, you know, how many bytes of content are being processed. And I think that so many of us have been used to, you know, fixed price, you know, like per user or prescription, something like that. And there's a consumption model now being elevated in a much bigger way. So be mindful of that in terms of your cost structures.
Steve,
I was gonna say that I'm with you in that, it sounds as if I need to hire somebody who knows AI and knows my business and then can do all this. Doesn't sound like this is something I can sit down and just do. I think that's what you were asking.
Well, I've heard from, Dimitri and Bill, that, you need some coding, you need some, you build these APIs and attach to other things. My mind is just racing with all these different opportunities, but we have some. We're always looking at specs and we're looking at data, manually kind of, just reviewing and the humans make mistakes, right? And so we're looking at material certifications coming from the mills in the metals business, chemical compositions, physical properties, and you compare them against ASTM or ASM standards. So the standards are out there.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So you've got that, you'll be able to say, okay, check that against that. Mostly it's PDF. But we're doing that manually. And it's, there invariably are some errors.
Like we're doing.
Is that something that we could develop?
That is.
A process for AI to just do all that for us? Right?
It's a fantastic.
Yeah,
use case.
that's a great application.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, sure. And what I would do is I would first take a look to see if there are vendors out there specifically in that space who's doing the work. They're already on some type of on it,
Mhm.
and I mean, you might be pursuing it internally, operationally as you grow, but there's a commercial opportunity there as well. Companies are doing something similar because that's well beyond just your business. That's manufacturing in general.
Yeah, so just to maybe expand on like, I think Steve's topic, I think it's a really good one. I think like there's like entry points to using some of this that aren't building full applications, which is. I think where Steve's getting to, but some of that, it may be more of an application, stringing pieces together, like I need to first.
I can totally see that.
I need to first read my database, I need to now go check against standards, I need to interpret, I need a user interface to present that back. That's probably not the entry point, I think, for a lot of people in this, it's probably more. It's the content generation, it's the search, it's that like, right, I think like right now, the efficiency stuff is pretty available to people, right? Like, I need to write an email, I wanna create a cover letter, I want a new format for my board presentation that uses this color scheme. Like, give me some ideas about that versus, traditionally, you go ask your marketing department and someone would kind of like think through a lot of these ideas, like. And some of that efficiency, I think, is available too.
That's
People here like today without having.
That's short-term real right now.
Yeah, I mean, we use it to write an ebook for marketing purposes. So that's like a perfect example of something that's easy to do and you can just go on and anybody can do.
It's also just, I mean, I think when people hear the term command prompt, you obviously went to a class specifically on it. The volume of context you can provide into that command prompt is just incredible. I mean, you can get more and more refined and get better and better results now. Because we were talking about reaching a point of diminishing return. But you can say, hey, I want to create an ebook, but I want it at a 5th grade level or a 12th grade level, and I want the audience to be this, and I don't want a paragraph, I don't want a paragraph to be longer than. So you can add all of that to your command prompts, and it's not code that you're writing. You're literally just, espousing that in just, you just type it in.
Well, yeah, one great thing about what you just said is I heard somebody say that what it is essentially is making your computer talk human.
Yes, you're having a discussion. You're having a discussion with your computer.
You don't have to code. You don't have to learn how to code. You can just say, this is what I want. Here's an example of what I want. And there you go.
And I just think you have to put your toe in the water.
I'm imagining a world where I can take the detailed general ledger data for a client, and of course, the protected environment, so it's not looking out into the world. I can take GL detail, dump it into the tool, and start asking questions like, why is undeposited funds out of balance? How healthy are these financials? Are these financials conforming to GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles? How realistic is that?
That's what Microsoft is going to be launching with Copilot. You should look up Microsoft Copilot. It isn't released yet, but they have some actual demos, if you look on YouTube, that are similar to what you just mentioned.
And Copilot is a much broader context than just even financial analysis. You can go in their Copilot enabling virtually all their assets. Well, not virtually all of it, but I think as much as they're going through, so, they're supplementing with AI and all sorts of. That's exactly what it is.
So is that something I can just log into or sign up for, or would I have to have an app developed?
Eventually, once it's released, you can just use it.
It's $30. I think it's like $30 per user.
Yeah, it's like $30 a user a month, but it hasn't been released yet.
What do you think?
I don't
Do they
know.
have a date?
Good question for Microsoft.
Microsoft.
I've been trying to find that out myself.
Sorry.
Unless Dimitri knows.
I don't know the answer on the date, but I think on like this financials example is something that like, when you kind of like, it's a real scenario. like,
Yeah, that's real.
We look at for clients, right? So I think Copilot, as Zoe said, provides that like potential. And the way that, like, an easy way to do this for someone who's not a coder or not an app is like, if you had a financial statement in Excel, you'll have a little button in Excel that's like Copilot. And you can just ask it questions, and you can say, Copilot, are these financials healthy? It will look at it and say, this is a financial statement, this is revenue, this is expense, this is gross profit, and it can give you a little narrative. Like, I think that potential is like, we're almost there, right?
That to me is the easy part.
Right, so that's the
That's
easy
easy.
part.
Yeah,
The next is like, give me a set of financial ratios and compare against the benchmark. You're gonna read that data. It's gonna compute the ratio. It's going to then source,
Benchmark.
right, source on the web or whatever other benchmarks. Be able to give you some.
Industry benchmarks, we service all kinds of clients and all kinds of different businesses, so
That'll be,
you could
that'll
have
be,
access to industry financial data benchmarks. That would be. fantastic.
Yeah, so I think that's like a next, and then like things like, is this gap or whatever, I'm not so sure, because that requires different level of expertise, right? I need like, right, I need like an auditor, I need someone like, is this truly on an accrual basis, we're gonna be asking the questions about it. So like, that's kind of where I like,
Yeah, if I could just dump in undeposited funds detail and it can tell me where it went out of balance and what year and which transactions, I think we're gonna.
Would you?
Would I? Yes.
Because isn't that what you charge people to do?
Well, they don't have to know how I got the answer.
yeah, they say they do it themselves, right? So
Yeah,
then,
that probably is the next discussion that we'll have is, where does it change the landscape of your business? And, if I could just dump that stuff into some software thing, why do I need you?
Because you need me, because most of my clients don't even know that they need to answer that question. They can't even read their financials, never mind know that they need to reconcile undeposited funds.
Isn't that scary?
So somebody's gotta be watching. Somebody has to be watching and verifying it, and that's really what it comes down to, I think.
yeah, I wouldn't actually assume that what we get out of that. If you were something like clear right now, that I wouldn't put trust in that. I want to validate that information, but that's.
Yeah, certainly.
How about
communication? It's asking and getting reports and moving BI involved. It's like, let me go just a step further. It was like, and they call my different people. They, Russ, we got 5 tickets that have nothing in 5 days. The trend is.
with the French accent.
Yeah.
Montreal friend.
Yeah.
we're-
So to me, it's more to bring it a step further, not go too deep, but also look at forecasting trends.
Yeah.
Can you have it call people?
They're
Provide
not-
reports?
It's not as involved, so there's this concept of predictive analytics where we're telling you what's likely to happen, right?
Yes.
And then there's prescriptive analytics, which is that next best action you're talking about, right? Which is, hey, learn this, figure out this one, and now do something with it. Right, that's still evolving, that's not quite there yet. We're still at that most things are still at that predictive level. We can learn something and push it out to your HubSpot system, so you know that your sales team knows, hey, gotta go make a call here and talk to this person, because this person's at risk. That exists, but the next, what they often term next best action, that's not quite there yet for many of these, so at least that's my experience.
Yeah, that's been our observation too. I mean, where we're trying to wire it into like the contracting process is that, as contracts get routed by the hundreds or thousands, down certain paths, if you could actually track on the trends in terms of how they were routed based upon the risk level of the contract, then it would have the smarts to actually introduce more or less approvals based on the nature of the actual assessment. So that would be an action that's incorporated. And there's a term that I just read about earlier this week, and they were talking about how there's generative AI. But generative AI is so old news now. Now it's interactive AI, and so I'm still trying to interactive AI. The summary that I saw was that that's taking that action to another level. It's allowing the machine to think much more so on its own without necessarily as much training. And that historically, by the way, guys, I mean, I think like when I've been involved with AI over this time, like I've seen, if you want to train it on documents to try to extract data and do some other stuff, so much of it was driven by having to train. And what I mean by training is to say, I'm going to load up starting with maybe 1,000 documents, and I'm going to go through and have it look for patterns. And it was a programmatic effort. And then it became maybe a configuration effort. Maybe there's 100 contracts that you have to do. And what's happening is those training thresholds are coming down and down because at least that's where I've seen like the transformers are getting smarter. So like for today, like when we say we want to actually go and train in the system, we don't have to actually do any training. When you want to build a contract up to actually extract metadata, there's no training involved. You just say, here are the fields I want to fill in. And it will just have the smarts to then go to those fields without having to say, let me load up 20, 30, 40, 50 sample documents and then mark them as the whole notion, highlighting and marking them up to say this fields that patterns.
Can you talk more about the transfer? I mean, is that just sort of a programmatic transfer function? Here's a bunch of inputs, it's going to create these outputs, and then you're streaming it in the pipeline to get you where you want to go. What's the magic about the new transformers that we didn't use to that?
So I'm not a developer, I can speak to at least what I've been exposed to, and that is that there have been different levels of transformers as we progress forward, and different transformers, and they've advanced in terms of their capacity to support different types of transactions, the volume and interpretation. And over the past year and a half, 2 years, they've grown in ways that are exponential relative to what they have been. You might be able to provide much more color.
Yeah, I mean, transformers are really just another technique to determine patterns and results. I mean, we used to start with statistical models out there, and then we moved these things called linear models where we can take the trees out there. Then you got these things called neural nets, which are a whole another approach. They're all doing the same thing, frankly. They're just doing it in different ways. And frankly, a lot of it's also driven by the data you're trying to analyze. Certain models are good for certain things. Transformers happen to be one of those types of models we can use to analyze data. They're really good for certain things. For other things, it just kind of depends on the questions you're asking. But that's really all it is, an evolution of that ability to process information and find those patterns in the data. Transformers are just one of those techniques.
I understand on the structured side, I've got this big data set, and I said, we at a point, and there's your, software and your solutions, and you basically ask the question, and we spit the data back.
Yeah, so the way to break it down to basic concept is what we're saying is give us all your historical information so we can learn from it. Right. And what we really mean by that is we're going to go find those patterns and create a model that will say, look, if we look at your data and we can identify these patterns in your data, we can tell you what's going to happen next because we've gone through all this historical information, all this training data is what they often call it, to learn these patterns. Right. And we can see from the training data what the outcome is going to be because this is what's happened in the past. Now, obviously, there's thousands of factors that can go into it. Countless factors that go into any one of these questions. But that's in essence what we're doing. So you're basically just trying to say, look, I have all this data I've captured in the past. Some of it's going to be helpful figuring out what's likely to happen next. Some of it's not. Some of it's probably changed over time. What might have happened 5 years ago is not necessarily what's going to happen now. All those things come into play, but it's just learning from that history. Right? And in the end, you're basically just building a model that says, look, if I see this pattern with the new data that I'm giving it, my new customer, for example, that's just come in, then I know this is what's going to happen because this is what's happening next.
I think
Fundamentally, that's all.
when I heard you talk about two problems though, Steve. I heard you talk about doing regs comparison based on some, files that are coming in. I heard you saying you got a corpus of data that you want to get smarter. And
Yeah, it's not, from our perspective, it's not so much we need to predict. But we have a set of production standards. That are, again, there's so many different variables. And be able to look at this data and say, for this alloy and this size range and this tolerance range. How do the standards compare against? How do the actuals compare against them?
Do you define those standards? These are industry standards.
No, these are our IP, but we want to say, because then we develop a closed loop system, maybe get to that learning part where it says, we're constantly looking at that. And massaging our standards that go back and adjust our pricing based on these new, kind of averages and, we can. But it's really getting the intel out of this data. It would take somebody, weeks to go through
The
it.
human can't find it. It's just too much information.
So,
Yeah, I mean,
What you're asking for is actually custom solution that have to be built. And that's where I see a lot of the business struggling, where they understand that at a personal level or semi-professional level, they can use ChatGPT, but within their own work environments. There is a level of custom development and integration that needs to be done. Challenge is that there are service providers who can do that. But you as a business owner are unable to articulate what you need. So the gap is there. It will be solved soon, but I feel that like what you're saying is something that I feel can be done. It requires, a few developers working on understanding the requirements and then putting together a solution. But just that translation is where the friction is.
That's the takeaway for me from the discussion so far, is that there is that gap between the capability of AI and the applications of it. And so here are both good examples of in your case, Russ, you're focusing on just contract management.
Right.
And then you're applying AI to that. And I think what Steve would want would be somebody like you who's working on applying AI to manufacturing environments.
Which I have to measure.
Yeah, the thing is, the technology totally exists and it's totally possible. But it does take like some heavy lifting to actually get it accomplished.
And you bring up a great point, that the reason we built Squark the way we did is because of that disconnect between the business understanding what they're trying to ask and what they're looking for in an output and understanding what the data is telling them. And this tech team who's been tasked to go build that. There's a massive gap there. We've seen millions and millions of dollars wasted and years wasted because they don't understand each other. Which is why we built Squark the way we did, was to push that back to the business. So it's been happening for years, right? Things like Tableau, even Excel to a certain extent, have been empowering the business side to be able to say, hey, let me learn this myself because I understand what I'm looking at. I understand what I'm trying to get to. I understand when I get this answer and realize that it wasn't what I was asking. I really want to ask this over here and I want to pivot a little bit. That's the tools are out there to help you do that. They're getting better, right? They're constantly evolving. But that's certainly one of the challenges because when you think programmatically, when you start having to do that, that's a level of complexity. Now you've got to bring in somebody who knows how to do that stuff. And they've got to understand your vision. It's gonna be hard, yeah.
But then throw into that mix, what you started to develop today will change next month. It's just such a fast paced. I've never seen any technology fun move as this has. Just so it's just you have to constantly be evolving, but you gotta draw a line in the sand.
So, we'll go to Mark. I just wanted to do a check and want to take a break in a couple of minutes. And then I think we can probably move to the next discussion, which is, what are the implications of this technology to me tactically and strategically. I think we've started to answer the tactical question. Mark?
Thanks, Scott. So just quick question for Dan, I think kind of follows on this concept of targeting new solutions for specific use cases. I guess, Dan, when you build a model, in like, you know, your example, is it usually built around answering like a specific question? Like,
Yeah, so when we start, we don't actually make any assumptions about what model is gonna work for you, because we don't know what your data looks like, we don't know where your questions gonna be yet. So when we built Squark, we kind of took that approach of saying, look, we're starting greenfielding stuff. We're gonna say, hey, here's the data you gave me, here's the column you told me to learn about. Okay, so I want to learn who's gonna churn, I want to learn who's gonna, how much money somebody's gonna spend on something.
right, so that's like, you have a premise, and what's the question? You're trying to answer.
Right, and this gets a little bit back to that structured data question. I mean, you need to have your data structured in a way that we can learn from it. And so you need to have, hey, these are all my past customers, for example, and here's how much they've spent, and here's what those customers look like, and where they lived, and what they've done in the past, and what other things they've bought, and all this good stuff, right? So that structured data is important, but that ability to always constantly realize the world is evolving. So the model you create now probably isn't going to be very valuable 6 months from now, because your data is changing, the way your customers in particular change. And so we always take that approach of, all right, let's look at the data you've given us, let's analyze that data, let's figure out what model or algorithms best answer this particular question with this particular data, and then we'll give you that. And you may want to rerun that. Like, we give 2 actions within our tool. One is to say, look, we've created a model, give us your latest data and we'll give you the predictions. The other action is to say, look, we also need to just relearn. Okay, we're going to pull in all that training data, which is going to include all the newest information you've gotten over the last X amount of time. Rebuild that model on that newest data, and now allow you to go and start predicting it. So if some customers may predict every day, they get new people coming in or new questions coming in, and every month they may relearn and rebuild their application, their models. And that's one of the challenges we always face. As I think you guys said before, what you build now is probably obsolete as soon as it hit, as soon as it hit production out there. It's just the world we live in.
Yeah, like one of the things we had done, Mark, was, you know, this just by virtue of giving forum, we'd actually come out, we worked with Microsoft for about a year, using their cognitive services capability to actually do the technologies to figure out how to do it. And when they announced, when ChatGPT hit in November, all right, and then Microsoft made their announcement, I guess it was February, right? What happened was we had built the entire user experience from where we wanted. All right, we ultimately ended up pulling out the cognitive services component and putting in the ChatGPT component, but still keeping our interface basically the same. You know, but we were able to simplify the administration. So we removed the whole training piece and just said just add fields based upon the type of contracts. You know, but that's a case of like, that's where we had to kind of roll with, we had to evolve with what was happening.
Okay, any final questions? So let's take a fairly substantial break. Let's take,
You guys,
so
that's the very time.
we touched on some of the issues that I kind of thought we could talk about now. And those are sort of more general. What does this technology mean for my business? It could be strategic, it could be tactical. Is there a threat? And, you know, Lisa, you talked about, if I could find a way to do this, I would be happy. Well, I'm not sure.
Dimitri's gonna fix it for me.
Dimitri's gonna do it. Okay. Figure that out. The thing that I take away from the discussion that we had earlier is that there is a gap between what can be done and what we need doing. And so there's, I think, you know, to find somebody like Squark or somebody industry specific like Contracts 365 to deploy this stuff on your behalf, I think is important. I think there, and a little later, I hope we have our laptops, we can have these guys come around and say, here's how you log in, here's how you do a command, here's how you get started, because I haven't even got I haven't even been able to do that. And ChatGPT, okay, I get a bunch of things, right? I don't know what to. So maybe we can just get a toehold on that. But what specific things do you think AI can do for you or against you in the future? I think, Bill, your business probably has, you do compliance stuff, both labor compliance and environmental compliance. And you help people do that. So how would it impact your business?
Oh, so I think, sorry, my name is Bill, the company is at G360, and they ran out of name tags, so I have it here. So, no, I actually thought there are two things. One is that I think that ChatGPT with this, kind of recent, what I call frenzy, created a lot of buzz. So I think there's definitely a marketing angle, whether you are on the offering side, on the recipient side. So I think there's an opportunity to look at that and how do you really use this AI bandwagon for your business. Things that I thought, like, whether it's Bing search or Microsoft Edge for your own thing, those are some efficiency. Those are, like, to me, toys. So really doesn't do it. The other angle that I saw is that, to kind of what Dan was saying, that there's a lot of data. This data, most of this meaningful data live within the enterprise. So it's actually, how do you make that work? Those are very proprietary stuff. And I think, Dan mentioned about Tableau, which is an analytics engine that is not part of the SAP, but they were here, 15 years ago? So folks have already been doing this thing for years. So one thing that I thought I was talking to Dan a little bit is that, if you think that ChatGPT, what got to its frenzy of fame is because it was creating very fancy text that's based on language. But I actually follow a ChatGPT version of Japanese or Chinese. So think about the training on the Asian languages. It's actually a different field. So I just wanted folks to feel like don't get carried away. ChatGPT isn't going to help Patriots to win the game. Isn't gonna, seriously, it's not that different. But the point is that if you're looking within an enterprise, you're looking at a compliance, looking at the supply chain, looking at your exposure, risk, there's a lot to do. But is that all ChatGPT? Not really, because that's what kind of then comes to the thing you were talking about, structured data. Because the number, your profit, loss margin, how that relates to your operation, your efficiency, your productivity, that's not a language model. It's actually a business. And it's also has a lot of external factors you will never be able to model. And it's also proprietary. So we were looking at this more, looking at the supply chain compliance data. How do we really make your own data to speak to your own thing? So I'm just gonna stop that.
So you don't see an existential threat or a particularly large opportunity in your business overall?
Well, I was trying to get people to say, in order to build this model, I was trying to get people to volunteer this data, because in order to build the model, you need everyone to participate. After all, I think it's very hard for anyone to expose their supply chain data for this kind of a model. People like to hold that data for private. That's so far the number one thing that I have run into challenge.
Who sees a particular threat in their business? Where do you see threats everywhere?
I do. So our business is really about creating innovative medical device technologies. And if you look at our website and our mission, one of the things we say is, monitoring diagnostics and decision support. We say that, but among us chickens here, we don't do a lot of that decision support piece right now. We provide data that helps with it. So it's a little bit aspirational, but the decision support thing in the medical world is, I think, being overwhelmed by AI. I think the other thing is we do our work by getting funding from the government we compete for. And when I look at the opportunities, the topics, the RFPs the government's putting out, it's like fully 50% of them now mention AI. And it was like 0 5 years ago. Right? So to me, it's an existential threat that if we don't get into the AI business, we are going to lose funding opportunities because they're going to go to somebody who at least says they're doing AI. And the reality of being able to develop competitive products to support medical decision is going to get away from us because people are going to can overwhelm it with AI. Now, I have some very strong feelings about the need to hybridize traditional algorithm development and traditional procedural things with AI. And maybe the guys who are really doing it now say, well, we're kind of already doing that. But, one of the things, and again, what you've said, and sort of full disclosure, right? I took a course in artificial intelligence when I was in college, probably 1977. And I laugh whenever people talk about artificial intelligence because it's a totally moving target. We should just stop using the term artificial intelligence. But, I understand about neural networks and machine learning and training. The fact that it's kind of reassuring to me to say it's all that stuff that I worked on 20 years ago, but it's just gotten faster because the computers are better. And yes, we're, reusing some of the tools and building on them. So it's getting better. But it's not really fundamentally different, right? So, we need to bring that into our business, and we need to build and not just make us more efficient, but to embed it in our projects. And we need to hybridize it with what we've done. We've been very strong in being able to look at data and understand the human physiology, and to some extent the underlying physics of the sensors and the instruments, and develop algorithms based on that human knowledge. We need to marry that with the machine learning aspects so that we can deal with larger sets of data and more quickly and efficiently. But I think one of the things, that I remember about neural networks is they're extremely good at interpolating among their experience set, and they're really bad at going outside of the sphere of their experience. And I think you need boundary conditions on what it's going to tell you, and that the boundary conditions should be based on real knowledge of the physiology, knowledge of the physics, the measurement analysis, for example, in our field.
Sounds like, there might be a threat, but it sounds like an opportunity for you.
Well, every threat is an opportunity, right?
Anybody else see a particular threat? Lisa?
So I see threats on two horizons, which also become opportunities. One is, our firm does, bookkeeping and staff accounting and financial analysis for micro businesses. And so we price on a fixed price per month for a scope of work. And productivity and efficiency is critical to us to achieve our gross margins. And so this feels to me a little bit like going from 13-column green sheets to Excel. If you don't learn Excel, you're going to get left in the dust. And I feel like I'm in that same place now. If we don't embrace this new technology and make it work for us, we're going to get left in the dust. So that's one threat and an opportunity. The other one is when QuickBooks first came out, it looked really pretty. It had the windows and it says, oh, you want to write a check? Press here. You want to do this? Press here. And everybody thought, oh, I don't need a bookkeeper. I can just press these little buttons and pretty things happen. And I can't tell you how many horribly messed up sets of books we had cleaned up because people thought they could press the button. They didn't actually know what was happening behind the scenes in the accounting software. And I think that as tools like Copilot come out, people might get the idea that they don't need us anymore because they can just press these pretty buttons and it'll all work for them. And so while that's a threat, it's a short-term threat because eventually they're going to figure out, oh yeah, it doesn't work the way I thought it did. And I still need someone who knows accounting.
We're a long way from removing humans.
From doing what?
We're a long way from removing the humans from the loop.
Oh, gosh, yes.
No, the idea is there, I think all AI does in a lot of those is just essentially make it more efficient.
Yeah.
Right, you can do certain things faster.
Yeah.
But the humans just going to evolve to do those other things that they can now do, right?
Yeah.
Bruce?
It's figuring out how to make it work.
Right.
The threat that I'm worried about the business plan. The part I'm excited about, the threat of like, oh, we do forecasting, we do utility planning, we do stuff. The tools are, we do drafts, we do data around, right? I asked them to staff, like, oh, go to this meeting or we've done this time. It's like, oh, I told Excel I got 100 Excel files that I just did like all in another Excel file. Organized. There's 3 sentences, really in English. It's made it. And so the efficiency, building into our tools, I'm excited about the kind of new kinds of models for the substance of what we do. The part that I'm worried about is our business, all of that starting out. So the professional services, we have contracts, we bid hours and pricing. And so something as we get, we'll compete. I got no problem with it. Right? We're gonna do good work, we're gonna use these tools. I couldn't stop the staff. They're really smart kids. But the part that I'm worried about is bidding, and we bid, it was supposed to be RFPs a lot of times, building up like over hours and rates. But that whole thing seems like it. Something we actually really
Okay.
That's
I
bad.
share a similar thread as Bruce mentioned. So we're in technology. And a lot of work is deep in from that perspective. So if there's a more efficient workforce, but what I'm seeing right now play out for us is in our business, there's this high demand on a 10x engine. People who don't know 10x engineering, a developer, two developers are never equal. Right? Someone who's really, really good is not 20% better, or 40% better, or 2 times better. He or she is 10 times better. And one makes an argument, and that's why people are willing to pay obscene amounts of money for that developer, because they know that the activity output that that person will bring is just going to completely change the way we do business. For us, it's always been a challenge, right? How do you hire a really small 10x engineers and then retain it? Because these people have a very short shelf life. They want to move to the next, unicorn, and then become billionaire, but continue there for 3 years. How do you retain it? And for every one 10x engineer, we would have 10 or 15 average engineers. What I'm seeing is that today I can take a lot of these average engineers and get above average performance done. They may not be 10x, but in a lot of cases they are 3x and 4x and 5x using these tools. There's a site for Stack Overflow, which was like a Google for software engineering. If you have a problem, rather than trying to search for a solution on Google, you will go to Stack Overflow, and someone somewhere in the world has probably solved that problem, and then you just copy paste that solution and you figure it out, throw it in the run. And now with ChatGPT and the Copilot and their own product, it's just phenomenal how these people are able to solve their own problems much faster than they were. So I'm seeing bringing in people with very little experience and getting them to do work which I would expect a very senior person to do. So there's a lot of transition that I'm seeing in the workforce on the design side as well. Same applies. There are so many AI tools out there that are giving ideas. A lot of design work is come up with 5 ideas, and you spend 2 weeks coming up with 5. Now you spend 20 seconds and you've got 20 ideas, right? And you can pick and choose and you curate which one you want to work on. So it's got efficiency there. And even on the product strategy side of business, the biggest challenge for our strategy teams used to be content. You talk to a customer, even if it's a simple project or a simple website that they need to develop. The biggest hurdle was the customer would take forever to give website content. Something that could have been finished in 2 weeks and not, be talking about 6 months later. That's what so we're seeing tremendous amount of efficiency in how products are designed and built. And we're seeing engineers who we would not have trusted to take on tasks. Now we feel a lot more comfortable that they will be able to handle this because we've got buddies, AI buddies.
So it sounds like an opportunity, not so much a threat, but I think you started out by saying that competitively, you need to be, you need to bid. With that,
The expectations are
baked in.
becoming more and more unrealistic as well. So what I wanted to read to the first point in continuation of what you said is that now if you say this thing is gonna take 1 month, the customer comes back and says, I would it take 1 month?
Yeah.
You know, don't your guys have those GPT things that do it in 2 days? And now you're competing, you have a different conversation.
Okay.
That's real though. I think anyone who's actually charges by the hour. Yeah, that's across the board.
Yeah.
You know, people will be looking to economize by using some of these tools.
And I think I think what your 10x engineer was last year, versus what your 10x engineers know, it's like 3 years from now. You're still gonna need 10x engineers. They're just gonna have a different type of skill set and they're gonna still get that same cost because there's certain things you can't do.
The 10x will remain a 10x or maybe become a 12x. They're not becoming a 100x.
Right.
But the 1x or the 0.5x has the ability to now become a 3x.
I think it's a great point, right? You're bringing up the lower boats that are floating up there and going higher, which is a great point.
So you're compressing the experience.
So on that,
Mark, I would say, I'm actually thinking a little bit of the counter to that as like, I think you said like, you know, you're not replacing the human from the loop, but I think we are potentially replacing a less experienced human from the like. So yes, so I think it's about how do you make that less experienced human, like how can they now use these tools so they can stay at least a 1x engineer? Because what's gonna happen is the people who are hiring the 1x engineer are gonna be able to use language to do the same thing that the 1x engineer did, unless the engineer is like sharpening their skill. And I think like when I look at our business, I guess, I see everything also as an opportunity, but there's a threat from a shift in the business model. I think like the less experienced folks that we see kind of hire and put on projects for less experienced tasks. Those tasks can be more automated, right? Data migration type work or report development work, right? If people can just ask Tableau or ask Copilot to generate a report that does X, Y, Z, like that's probably not where we're going to be developing our team. I mean, more of like the data engineering, the data pipelining type work, or the advisory work, but how to use these tools to benefit your business. So I see that shift of the like people paying for the expertise and seeing the value of the expertise, but the things that are less experienced, like wanting to, and it's going to be a while still before they can, right, still be able to rely on like these like products and tools to solve their problems, but it's coming.
Well, I think it's, and I.
just had a quick comment.
That's what I was gonna do.
I think it's great. They always got the greatest metaphor.
Okay.
So I just had a quick comment. I thought I was at the Harvard Forum on AI. There's definitely a big social issue here that has told us because we just have too many people, not enough things for them to do.
Okay. I'll argue with that. Zoe, what is your comment?
So what I've said a few times is think of it like a screw gun. It's just a power tool. So like, do you see any contractors with a screwdriver screwing in a screw anymore?
Yeah. Gotta have the right tools.
Yep, it's just a tool.
Yeah, but somebody's gonna like be trained on how to use the tool.
That's true.
So
So
it's easier to learn the tool now. Do you need a computer science degree to build an app? Or can I just use the model, right? They talk to a large language model and have it think through the app, right? So I think it's a shift, I guess is all I'm saying, like, it's a shift in the, like, that skill set required to do something, right? There's certain skills that are no longer going to be as valuable as other skills, like, but learning to use the model, learning to use the tool, having that logic ability to, like, connect the dots is going to continue to be valuable.
that's the new skill, yeah.
Yeah.
Are there words that you put in a job description that is there a training? Is there a certification? Is there a training for to prove that somebody can do this stuff? And you still mean it?
I think, I know with our recruiting efforts, you know, if people are expressing interest specifically in their AI expertise or if they're experimenting, like with the guy who was looking on, you know, he was experimenting with things, you know, and so, you know, that drew us to him. for sure, this was really just an experience.
So it wasn't like he had a degree in AI or anything. It wasn't a,
I have to imagine it's gonna come in pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You know,
But I don't think it will carry as much weight as you think it does. I think you're still gonna hire the people who are involved in it.
Yeah.
you know,
It's no different than we did 15 years ago. You hired the smartest person you could find and they evolved with the times. And I think the same thing will happen here.
You know what, I think there might be a supplement to that though, is when you have platforms like a Microsoft or OpenAI and their open certification courses, those will carry with it.
Yeah, the certifications, yeah.
So I think, yeah, I want to go hire those people with certs.
But I would say also in a typical recruiting process, I mean, we always ask, how do you stay on top of things?
Right.
And some people don't have a good answer. Some people say, oh, we attend webinars, we read blog posts from known people in the industry, come to user groups, participate in conferences and so forth. And usually the ones that are more active in that space are usually more able to talk about the latest trends, what's happening, what's coming. And then the ones that just work their 9 to 5 and kind of are siloed are usually not the ones that would be in that.
okay, any other thoughts? Threats, opportunities, changes in behavior?
I think there's great opportunities in terms of your supply chain of the companies that you use too. Like, example for us is we use Zendesk for our test software. And they're actively working in terms of how to infuse AI directly into, the some of we're talking about, like if you're not looking at your vendors as well to introduce more efficiencies, because that's where they've got their expertise and now they're saying, hey, AI is hot, they got to infuse this in. So if you're not having those dialogues with vendors, you're going to spend some extra money. Efficiency wise and training.
Instead of a person telling you that, or a recording telling you that your call is important, please hold.
Yes.
It'll be a.
Automatically generated, with really good data flower sensor, so that they don't flower color. So.
I am really looking forward to customer support models, really taking it up 100 notches because, I don't know if there's AI back there, but if there is, it's not working very well.
I'll share a personal example too. So I was recently at another AI event, and one of the speakers brought his middle school age daughter on stage with him, and it was actually a really interesting story. So she has diabetes, and she has to monitor how much sugar she eats on a daily basis, which could be challenging depending on what you're doing. So he built a very basic app, but instead of like MyFitnessPal or all these apps where you have to go like one banana and it takes like 30 seconds to put one entry, they did a speech to text thing where she could say, oh, I had half a banana, a cup of coffee and whatever else. And it would automatically separate what that was using GPT. It would fire that off to like the MyFitnessPal APIs, bring back the sugar contents of what they did. So on a daily basis, you got a quick flash. Okay, I've had this much today. I have to stay under this limit. And it makes it much easier than spending all this time trying to click through and what's 15 grams in a banana? Like, right? A lot of times these measurements are not well known, but with that, they could also do a conversion. So okay, if MyFitnessPal has, if a slice of cake would be in grams instead of ounces, they could do a conversion in that space before saying no. So it's pretty cool, very practical. Instead of taking a couple of weeks to build it and kind of showcase it. It wasn't pretty, but it solved a need and it just showed how simple it is to like use these things to tie it together if you know something about it.
That's great. That's a good story.
Yeah, like that's one of the things with GPT is the API is so much more powerful than going to the web page and typing stuff in. Because you can really, once you have all of your different apps and they all have APIs associated with them, you can like link all those things together, basically.
Let's just give a question. What's an API?
It's an application programming interface. So it's basically a web call, essentially, in the most basic sense. Not in every case, but like it's where I basically say I want to ask what's the sugar content of a banana. So instead of me going and typing that in, I take that and I do a web call with that request, and then I get it back with as a response, and I can embed that into like an application.
So web call would be as if I had typed it into the search and
Think of it more like you're filling out like a form on a piece of paper. It says like, what kind of information do you want to know? Like, what language do you want this back? And you fill out a form and you give it to them and they give you a response back based on what you said. But it's all done.
Yeah, it's all you can automate it.
Maybe another way from an end user perspective is that, so when you type, you can do one API at a time. So the true power of the API is now you can chain 100 APIs. So this one call, you got 100 things back. So you can never beat that thing. So think about API just virtually typing one command, but through API, you can do 100 things at the same time, or a million at the same time. So that power is like the limitless.
Or you can link it, so like GPT can send its answer to another application, which can send its answer to another application, which can then give you the answer.
It's like behind the plumbing behind the scenes that lets one user interface tap into more places.
Software talking to software.
Thank you.
I wanted to share a story of where I went to the MIT AI sale event a few months ago. And over there, this professor, her name is Dina Kadavi, and I would urge everyone to go and find that YouTube video and watch that then, because it was mind-blowing. It was an Alexa-like device that you put in a room, and it tells you vitals about a human being without ever touching the device. So if the device is in your house, all your vital information is being sent to that device through AI. Essentially, they're using radio signals for detection for things like Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's, Crohn's disease, like things which are almost impossible to identify. This device just being in your room or in your phone is sending radio signals, and it's magic. Like that video and that talk just completely blew me away to what it is coming.
Dana Katav,
Dina Kadavi, Dina.
Can you just send it to me and I'll send it to her?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'm not sure that I want that.
Alexa already knows everything about it.
Yeah. All right, any other thoughts about what you'll do differently in the presence of this technology?
I would just one point of view. For us, when we're in the competitive landscape, like every contract management vendor that's out there and their brother and sisters, they're incorporating AI in some capacity. Like if you don't maintain that competitive component, then what happens, it's becoming so visible now that you will actually lose pace in the industry. So in certain actual offerings, service or product, if you don't have it, it could be an hindrance.
I think we also have to be careful because people who say they have AI capabilities doesn't.
So yeah,
it's such a gray area. In
so
many ways.
It's so true.
That doesn't necessarily mean they're using some advanced technology to do X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
Right. They can just say that, oh, I'm using AI and I've got it to predict this one statistical thing. That's AI.
Yeah. Well, good heavens. Somebody can claim they've got artificial intelligence and they've got real intelligence. Bill, and then
one last comment. So I thought like 6 months ago, I wasn't thinking that way, but I almost felt like now, if you don't have an AI in your marketing strategy, you're kind of almost coming up. You're already catching up. So because everything had an AI thing, like I bought a remote control camera. This is AI powered. This little thing, whatever is called AI, that you can wave to that camera is called AI. But I felt like it is real AI that helps your true full competency. But without an AI in your marketing, it's almost like you're talking, you're blind, you're not talking. So it's almost like it's a necessity. I felt like 6 months ago, I didn't feel that way. I felt like I have to have an AI pitch, even though as Dan was talking, it doesn't do much, but you got to have
the spotlight is on it for sure.
You see an awful lot of people trying to jam ChatGPT into one specific thing that their application does, so they can say they have ChatGPT. It may not add that much value, but they can say it's integrated.
But Mark, I think so just 2 really quick points on that topic. We recently got a grant for incorporating AI into our product, so that's opportunity for people, right? To just be able to add, like, say you're getting looking for funding to do that. There's like money out there to do that. But the second thing I think that just I think Scott asked like what could we do differently, and I think like if you see this as like a transformative shift, like to allow time for like innovation and routine to figure out how to use it. So I think like that's something that like, you know, Kyle's just kind of like, what are we doing internally? Like trying to encourage people to think about how you, like, what are the practical use cases and maybe giving people some time to like think about that. Yeah, doesn't need to be overnight. It's not like, oh, we'll bring it to market in the next month, but like, you know, encourage your teams to like spend some time trying to figure it out because there is going to be that.
That's a good point. Lisa, did you just leave us?
Did you just ask me something?
Were you doing your homework? I just, did you have anything to ask or contribute here?
Yeah, well, I guess I'll just ask this, and I apologize. I dropped off. I had a client. I work as an executive coach, and I think this just the conversation about AI, and I wanted to tune in and learn. I'm very much, again, just exploring and trying to understand. But I guess I'm curious if this already came up, please pass, but just any ethical issues in using it. And again, I'm thinking about it again as a coach, and I've been talking about this with other consultants. You can go in and get, you know, get beautiful material, but then you're like, okay, well, what do I do? And how do I then position it? And how do I shape it to make sure it's like my voice? And when is it crossing the line? So I guess if there's any ethical implications that have come up, again, in any business angle, I'd be interested in hearing that. And apologies if you've already covered it.
Well, I'd say if you read the actual terms of the GPT service, you're signing your life away that you're not going to use it for like political campaigning. You talk about you're not going to do it to generate hate speech. I mean, there's a whole like list of ethics that you need to agree to, at least for this round of AI technologies. Which, you know, as you read through it, you're kind of like, yeah, you know, never use it for any of this stuff. But as you have, if you're building software or if you have solutions you're implementing for clients, you need to make sure that they also understand that what this is intended to be used for. Now, the GPT-4 model, which is the most recent one, actually has a lot of these safeguards already built in, which like will not give you a response if you ask something inappropriate or something that could have negative consequences behind it. There's still prompt engineering tricks to get around some of those. Like, you know, don't tell me where to, you know, buy weapons and things like that. I'll still tell you, go, don't look here. So that there's still being ironed out. But I think like from our perspective, that's kind of it. I suspect there's companies that will probably are marketing to industries or into sectors that the service does not want you to be using this technology for. And I really don't know how it's enforced or how that would be controlled, to be honest.
When I think of the ethics, I think, are you utilizing IP and content from others and you're not disclosing in ways that actually are material? And I think that's the ethical quandary. I think Lisa, that you might be alluding to as well. So I think they're the use cases that you're talking about there, Dimitri, but I also think too that, you know, you go and say, you know, hey, I was able to just actually generate some form of a document that I otherwise had to create a brief in some capacity. And it took me 15 minutes and I charged 8 hours. There's an ethical interpretation of that in terms of, you know, what am I actually going to charge for it? You know, and I think the world is going to ultimately lean towards transparency, you know, but there's value add in terms of my interpretation of what I just put together and how I molded it and shaped it beyond that, you know, is where I really add my value. You know, so I lean on the side of being transparent with
I think that's just gonna be taking so long. I think Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and another guy was in the Senate testifying in this thing. We're talking about even about regulation, but I do know that some colleges now saying the professors are not going to accept any work that use ChatGPT. So there is some, you know, implementation at a local level, but this is such a big topic. I don't think you can ever. I don't see how this can get resolved in a short.
There's some organizations I'm dealing with where we're talking about at the global level, country level, you know, company level, personal level. And governance and ethical boundaries need to be defined at all of the different respective levels. And countries around the world are trying to figure this stuff out, as our companies, as our people. Like, what's the right thing to do? Academia, we were talking before during the breakout, you know, in terms of the implications of like academia and education are going to, I think, profoundly be influenced in terms of what AI has to offer. Yeah. And that's just Very different.
I remember the debate when calculators came out, and could we use a calculator in an exam?
Yeah, yep,
It's just a power tool.
it's a power
That's
tool.
nice.
Yeah.
Thinking about, once it was developed, so
Yeah.
it's out and now, if you want, you can actually download. GPT for the video, and it can run the most basic computer, 16 RAM, and you don't have to go and set POS. Open.
Well, I would suggest, maybe Zoe's example, like, I think, you're out there, you're a contractor bidding on a job. And, and you sit there, and if you bid it as if you're using a manual screwdriver versus saying, I've got a power tool, and people are gonna look for your efficiencies. They're gonna expect that you're bringing the best to the table. And the power tool is, that you need to be efficient.
Well, that's what I think. Like, the way that I look at it is I think it's gonna take years, but like what Dan was saying, whether I say we use AI or not, like, I don't even really care what we tell people. Like, but let's use it to increase our own efficiencies. And by using it to increase our efficiencies, we're gonna gain a competitive advantage. And eventually, everybody's gonna have to do that, compete.
I think that's a good place to leave it. I would like to get hands-on now, and would it be possible? I've not been able to share a screen when I'm on Zoom, so maybe another laptop and you join the meeting and share a screen and show us how to get something done. Is that of use? Anybody here?
Yeah, stuff you use.
Yeah,
We should be able to do that.
okay.
Sure.
Zoe, can you figure that out?
I'm the IT guy, so.
In the meantime, maybe Christine, we can ask to open the bar and get the cheese and crackers. And then cheese and crackers.
I'm sharing your screen. Do you want me to do that?
Yeah. Yeah. Butter red.
Scott, I'd like a Chardonnay, please.
Send it right out. It'll be there in about 3 days. You can get your own. See, Gordon. So long, Gordon.
Okay, so you guys can see this, right? Can everybody see it?
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Your shoulders in the way.
okay,
You want to take?
yeah, no, I got it. Yeah, that's fine. I'm good.
So spends half his day like this.
Yeah, I know.
Praying to the Microsoft guys.
All right, so well, the first thing is you're not using an ad blocker, so you're gonna get all these ads. Yeah, you have to go to.
Tell us how to control an ad blocker while you're at it.
Just Google ad block plus and you can install that. It's free.
Thank you.
So you're typing that into.
Yeah, I don't even know if that's the right URL. I'm just making it
You
up.
just go to OpenAI, just type openai.com.
Yeah.
Then you'll have an option.
There you go. Yeah, I knew it was something like that.
I think it's there in the top right corner, so.
Yeah, it's I'm just gonna do what somebody said here and just do this. All right, so you can log in. Do you have a Google? You can log in with your Google account, Scott. Do you want to do that? Do you care?
No, I don't care.
This will start to track you now.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
He now knows everything. about you.
I trust Google.
Here's about your vote. We'll start to see your vote.
Let's make something up.
4/14/54. It's 1954.
I'm not that young, Scott.
Can you get rid of those windows on the right?
Yeah, if you just grab this little thing, Go across.
So these images have never.
Oh, that's on your laptop.
Based on a.
Oh,
That's on yours.
Yeah,
So
okay.
go on yours.
I got it, I got it.
Right. So
Yeah,
it's
only so much.
a sibling platform to ChatGPT. They're both be by.
Yeah. Those very late recording.
I can't make it any bigger than that.
What was the standard view at the top
Yeah,
of
go to
that?
scan, try.
You go back up where the window was, top one was standard,
Yeah, yep, there you go.
and then minimize that.
Minimize that window, yeah.
Little, there you go.
There you go.
Okay.
Okay, so, okay, so what would you like to see? This is really.
Just
like,
ask it something, dude. So I think I kind of got what I wanted. I just go open AI, search on open AI. And then log in.
I'll give you an example. So I'll give you an example of something that I would actually.
Okay.
So we're gonna make, that's gonna make a lot of. Well, that's because everybody here is talking.
Everybody's talking.
Let's just say.
You know what I've done? I've taken a job description, cut and pasted from a webpage. I said job description, then I put in my resume, cut and pasted from my resume. Write me a cover letter for this job.
So where do you?
Right in that window, you say,
Just paste it in there?
I would write, right in that window, I'd write me a cover letter for this job, space, paste it in, based on this resume, paste it in. Hit that green arrow. And it will see the things that are common.
Basically, right, I mean, there's more. Some people say one is better for that, the other.
Yeah, whatever.
I'd like to try using some of the like graphic stuff.
What you're saying, so even if you have type of that's fine.
Like, I'm gonna try this one. I guess, oh my God, this idea. So I'm consulting for this company back in, for my defense electronics stage right now.
So you put in like a contract, supplier, and someone else can actually see that, get a response, get similar content.
Give me some images or give me
So
that.
what you actually talk about inside of their. So it's when you're eating it, they took a copy of this, and a copy of that. So what happens in that garden state, which is if you case your contract in there, we know we're gonna train to figure it out.
That's where I need to precise.
No, that's why. Done said.
Sorry, guys.
Let's see what we're gonna do. CEOs making the presentation.
That's doing everything.
Okay, so you're following what I'm writing, right?
Yep.
I'm gonna head into.
And that's how we.
You don't think you're building business with anything that happens there?
Scroll up so you can read it.
How big, how much?
It doesn't know your name.
So how much is your prompt?
Yeah,
Really, you go to your prompt, like, really quick.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's, like, that's where I don't have any knowledge. That's a pretty lengthy prompt.
Yeah.
Like I said,
Well, you have to set it up, yeah.
right, that's what I'm saying. But that's.
Yeah, and any time that I would have it write an email, like, it's just not gonna generate it out of nowhere. You have to say, okay, write me an email based on this premise, and here's like 5 bullet points that we need to include in the email. And then it will make sure to include those specific points. Or you can even say, like, I don't want you to talk about the costs, because then you can add that, and then it won't talk about the costs, basically. Yeah, you can do that. You can say,
Based on this
so you could say, basically, I want the same information.
my skills with the job over the cover. Edited, it's a little over the top, but it's helpful.
Yeah, and then it's like, what happened?
The best thing I ever did was, so you can make it like a song.
I haven't. I'm like, oh my God, I've been here for 2 hours, we're doing this lesson. Give me a lesson.
Yeah.
Spit out like.
Oh, that must have been beautiful.
Dumped in the word, I chopped up, edited, took out.
And now you can ask him to do the.
Yeah, that's
Oh, the board, I hear teaching. Okay, yeah.
I mean, not teachers.
Umair says to have it give us the board's teaching.
Definitely, a good one.
Yeah.
Of course.
I don't even know. I'm not a music guy.
But the rhythm.
And so, you know.
There you go.
Gives you the cost.
And I can tell you, you can experiment with the rhythm using an instrument pattern.
So now, this is all related to that first.
It's all related to the prompt, yes. So I can also say now.
They could be learning about you as you go along, right?
And that's really where the creative. So I mean, that's like.
How would you then start another session? Or how would you say, forget that, do something new?
You would go over here, see it keeps the history of your chats.
Yeah.
So now, like, you could like go back to it like months from now and ask again. Right.
But you have each one of these independent.
Right, they're all completely independent, but like this is Russ here. So like one of the things that you can do, so he doesn't have a plus subscription. If you have a plus subscription, you can do more. You can actually go in and you can tell it, you can give it background information yourself. You can say, this is my name, this is the company that I run. I can write a whole background on who I am, and then it addresses you as your name, knowing like the type of company you run, so you don't have to tell it every time.
But what I want to do is and have us talk about the inside.
I'm in the middle of.
You can do this. So you can do that.
Following that, Lisa?
There's plugins that can, I don't think we have.
Yes, the demo was like awesome. Again, I'm just kind of more watching visually than hearing anything. But the demo was awesome, very helpful. Thanks.
Cool. All right.